Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Media Day has come and gone. Andy and I were there. What was Russell Westbrook promised or not? That's next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. That's where you go to see the podcast, to engage in all the visual fun, and really, more importantly, be part of a great community that's growing up around the channel. People leaving comments, leaving questions. We use that stuff on the show. Make sure you're participating. It's a great way to be part of the whole program. So Monday, Andy, an in-person media day for the first time in 2 years. It's been 2 or 3 years. I forget exactly how long it's been since this was all done in person. Everybody there. It was an interesting day. We got to hear from Darvin. We got to hear from Rob Pelinka. We got to hear from LeBron and AD and everybody. And ultimately, Andy, the story of media day is the story of Russell Westbrook, because that is the story of the summer. It's really the story of the Lakers right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it bleeds into so many different elements of what happened last year and what went wrong, what was perceived to be the causes of what went wrong. And then this year, in terms of Russ's role, the roster limitations that are created in part because of Russ's contract and the inability to move it. The lineup combinations that are going to be out there that will be dictated in certain respects by whether Russell Westbrook starts or comes off the bench. Like, in a lot of different ways, I think it is an overstatement to say that Russell Westbrook is the most important factor for this season moving forward, because I don't think that's true.
No, it's LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Absolutely. Like, that is 1A, 1B, and whatever is either 1C or 2. There's a really big gap in between. But either way, like, Russ was an overshadowing presence and question and theme throughout all of media day.
He is, and we'll get to some of the specifics, because it was both what was said about Westbrook and what Westbrook said that really, dominates this. But I think the point that you're making, the larger point that you're making, is really important, because Westbrook represents every frustration that Lakers fans have with this team and the state, to the extent that Lakers fans are angry. Maybe you're an optimist. Maybe, one of these people feels like things are they're going to shock the world and so on. But for most Lakers fans, there is a level of dissatisfaction with where things currently stand. And Westbrook symbolizes all of it. It's not necessarily Russ's fault. Like, I heard something really interesting that, I overheard a conversation between a couple other people in the media. And the part that it stuck out was like, Russ is the same guy. He's the same. He's doing the same thing as he's been doing for 20 years almost in the league. And I was like, yes, that's true. And that's kind of the problem. And part of the problem the Lakers had in trading for him is that everybody knew exactly what Westbrook would be. And so the crux of this year comes down to, can he be something different? And I don't know where you had it on the over-under on the amount of time it would take for the first headline to be generated from Lakers Media Day. It was about, 90 seconds in, when Darvin Ham and Rob Pelinka were asked if Russell Westbrook was a starting guard on this team. And no was the answer to that question. Darvin could not have been
not definitively.
Not definitively, no. But he is not right now the starting guard, because no spots, no roles, no nothing are guaranteed on this team. They are open to everything. And Darvin, in this case, explicitly non-committal on the idea of Russ starting. compared to,
I just want to make sure it was. I just want to make sure it was.
Sure, I understand
clear. Well, no, but specifically
that he's
when you
not
said it,
already coming off the bench, right?
right. Just nothing was clarified one way or the other.
Whereas earlier, I think it was right at the beginning, maybe right when Darvin was first introduced, he did call Russ a starting guard. And now, look, roster's much different, so you could always say things have changed, and so be that as
they didn't have Patrick Beverley or Dennis Schroeder when he said that stuff.
Correct.
And Kendrick Nunn's availability was still way up in the air.
All of it was different. And so it's not even like they're flip-flopping or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it is they have evolved from a place of Russell Westbrook as a starting guard on this team. He's accomplished it, to where they are now, which is no, I'm not. There's no guarantee in the slightest that Westbrook starts for the Lakers this year, which, like I said, that was, I think, of all the headlines, that was the big one.
Yeah. I mean, it's Darvin Ham continuing a theme that has come up a lot during the interviews that he's done leading up to media day when asked about Russ, which is he has a lot of respect for Russ. Russ has said the right things in the multiple meetings and conversations that they've had, that Russ's attitude heading into all this is terrific, that he has seemed very open towards the idea of focusing more on defense. Darvin Ham actually said that Russ said, hold me accountable. Like, not just the idea that he understands that he's going to be held accountable. Russ is like, I welcome this. Do it. That's fine. Like, these are all things that Darvin Ham has said consistently in praising Russell Westbrook. And I think really making an effort that, if nothing else, he sells as sincere in building up Russell Westbrook as a very positive and important part of this team, but also making it clear, and this has been the case for a couple months, he is not definitively starting on this team.
Yeah. Darvin's exact quote was, "We're a ways away," when asked about who starts in the backcourt. And that's, on the one hand, it's not surprising to see a coach answer the question like that, but there are other times, it's an open competition, so on. But
I think Darvin understands the difference between, most open competitions in this one. Not all open competitions are created.
Or they'll say, here's where it is now. Like, these are the guys, who are penciled in, but, we got, that can change. They committed to nothing. They pointed out the amount of options that they have. And, I think this is something that we'll talk about over the course of probably this show, certainly getting into tomorrow and the rest of the week. Like, so much of what the Lakers choose to do is going to be based not just on individual players, but combinations. Which guards pair best together? Which combinations make the most sense coming off the bench with who might also be coming off the bench? Who plays best next to LeBron and AD? Who actually needs the freedom to have those guys on the bench while they play? So, ultimately Westbrook may start, but still play a diminished role because it makes more sense for him to start. But in the traditional sense of, you're a starter on this team, you play 34 minutes a game, it is very clear the Lakers are not committing to anything even kind of like that for Westbrook this year.
Well, it's interesting, actually. Darvin actually specified, given where LeBron is in his career right now, entering season 20, and the importance of having, him available all year, but especially at his best in the playoffs. And also, the injury issues that Anthony Davis has had the first couple months of the season, he's going to be looking, if possible, to limit those guys' minutes as well. Like, to some degree, the first couple months of the year, assuming Darvin is comfortable having you on the floor, I think he is going to be looking to limit the minutes of LeBron and AD, much less whatever is coming for us. Like, there was an awareness and an emphasis on last year health torpedoed this team before they even had an opportunity to reach whatever you think their ceiling was.
Before they had an opportunity to disappoint you as a healthy squad.
Sure.
They got hurt.
I mean, look, you want to call this spin, whatever.
But it's true. It's absolutely true.
Well, no, I was going to say it's more disappointing to be let down by the full version of this team than the half full. Speaking of which, by the way, in terms of injuries, we'll get into this more over the course of the week, but Kendrick Nunn has been cleared for all contact work. Like for all intents and purposes, they're going to be monitoring him. They want to make sure they're smart given the context of having missed all last season. But for all intents and purposes, Kendrick Nunn is free to do whatever.
Yeah, and so that changes the math on what
really
they're doing.
Important.
Darvin's exact quote here was that they don't want LeBron and AD particularly playing playoff minutes in October. They are October, November, December. They don't want those. They don't want them playing playoff minutes. LeBron, even, who is famously resistant to rest and what's the load management is the phrase and all that, seemed a lot more open to it. He talked about availability as the most important thing. So maybe that's something we can get into.
Look, man, we were there for Kobe's last 2 years in the league. And, there came a point where it felt like, it didn't even feel like he ended up acknowledging this. Byron Scott had actually been more resistant about limiting Kobe's minutes than Kobe was.
That was a whole weird thing.
It was
it almost like hurt Byron's feelings and image of Kobe to make him sit. It was like hero worship.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, and then we'll go to break. But this may be the most honest, candid response I've ever gotten from a coach when it had finally been decided, like, look, we have to monitor this stuff with Kobe. He's going to have to miss certain games. There's no way he can get through this final season playing the way with the minutes he'd been given. It's just impossible. I asked Byron directly, like, is it difficult for you to wrap your head around the idea that this Kobe Bryant is not the Kobe Bryant that we've seen throughout the years, that, you were his mentor as a rookie, that, you've been such a champion of? And he said, yeah. Like it had been obvious that Byron was having a hard time just conceding this, but to hear him actually acknowledge it was very poignant, very telling.
So we'll get to LeBron's health. We'll get to what AD said about that over the course of the show. But we started on what was said about Russell. Now let's talk about what Russell said himself. That's next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest, easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf, but also the NBA. The season is now officially underway with Media Day, and you can get ahead of the 2023 action, lay down some bets. The Lakers currently 22-1 to win the title, but if you ask Darvin Ham, who is, by the way, 18-1 for Coach of the Year, he would say that's way too low. And Anthony Davis, 20-1 for Defensive Player of the Year, behind guys like Robert Williams and Jaren Jackson Jr., who are both going to be injured to start the season. Their return is still unknown. AD should take that very personally. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the game starts.
So, Russ, one of the things I thought was interesting about the Adrian Wojnarowski thing that came out on Sunday night was, it was just quotes from Russ. I think people were sort of surprised to hear him talking, that he was, doing media stuff or whatever. But one of the things that I thought was worth noting, it's like, I can read these words and I can interpret them in 100 different ways, but I can't see them. I can't see what Russ looked like when he said them. I can't see what his tone was like. I can't see his body language. He essentially said the same stuff on Monday at Media Day. The difference is now you could see him. And I think it was awkward. It was a little bit uncomfortable because both LeBron and AD had talked before. Both were asked about the idea that, like, hey guys, Russ thinks you didn't let him be himself. And they both stuck up for themselves. Certainly AD did, even more so. And, you get to Russ answering those questions and the stuff he kind of wanted to skip. And then the stuff he talked about in terms of, the organization believing in him, feeling wanted and all that stuff. You got to kind of see what he said to Woj with the body language and all the other stuff attached to it. And it was uncomfortable. It was awkward, but it was about, I thought, as good as you could expect. I mean, it is an uncomfortable and awkward situation.
Well, specifically the idea that it doesn't matter if he's won it or not, because he was given an opportunity in front of everybody to either soften what he had said to Woj in ESPN the day before about that it doesn't matter if he's unwelcome. He really just has to do his job and be a professional and play his ass off. And he reiterated those same remarks. And it's funny, actually, this was basically the take that I had during Monday's show, and seeing Russ talk about it more. In certain respects, it obviously depends on how it manifests itself and how Russ defines doing his job and how he defines doing elements of what Darvin Ham defines as his job,
right?
That he may not, appreciate as much.
Is that we were talking about this on the way, just kind of kicking around stuff that stuck out from Media Day, as you noted on our call, like he hasn't been asked to do anything yet. Like there's, it's just show up and play hard right now.
Right, exactly. I mean, it seems so far like Russell Westbrook likes Darvin Ham and respects Darvin Ham a hell of a lot more than he did with Frank Vogel. But it's early.
Mm-hmm.
But insofar as the idea of Russ having a certain amount of detachment towards this season with the Lakers, depending on how it plays out, honestly, it's fine. Like would it be preferable if he's somebody that wakes up every morning, like just through the moon that he's putting on that purple and gold jersey and like is cognizant of all of the history that comes with it? I mean, yes, obviously that would be preferable, but it's not necessary. And, something that had popped into my mind hearing more of his comments to Woj, specifically the idea that coming back to LA in a lot of respects was more special to his family and his friends and like his longtime network of people that he's close to than him specifically, which, kind of flies in the face of what you would expect for somebody that grew up in LA, is very prideful of being from LA, and the Lakers, other than maybe the Dodgers, are the quintessential Los Angeles sports team. So it would feel like one would be connected to the other, like indisputably. Sure. And maybe that's not the case, or maybe he quickly realized, it ain't all that. At the end of the day, if he just does what is asked of him and wraps his arms reasonably well around it, if to some respect it still feels like he's punching a clock, it doesn't really matter.
I realize there's a lot of frustration with Westbrook in the situation we talked about at the top of the show. Like he represents so much that is unpleasant about where the team is right now. It's not fair to Russ to expect him to answer the question about being feeling welcome by the organization and feeling wanted by the organization in anything other than the way he did, because he isn't wanted by the organization. The organization is trying hard to trade him. The organization wants to make him go away if they could. And Pelinka talked about this. It's like he made it clear, like we are willing to trade the draft picks. He said, we will do anything, including trading.
He didn't say this specifically about Russ.
No, he didn't. But he was asked about constructing, but that's what that is. That question is.
I just want to make sure he wasn't.
Right, but he wasn't saying, would you trade 2 first-round picks to get rid of Russ?
Right.
But he talked about improving the roster, and he said, we will do everything, including trading the picks. And he reiterated the point that we've been making all summertime, which is, given what we have and given the rules of the CBN, we only really get one shot to do this. And so we're being really careful about considering the options that we have. But that answer means, yes, we'd trade Russ if we could get the right deal. He'd be gone, and everyone knows it. And it's unfair to demand that Westbrook pretend that it's otherwise. So even as people who are critical of Russ, certainly plenty, that's not a place to be critical of him, because that's not fair. He knows he isn't wanted by the organization. I do think this is important. He feels wanted and respected by Darvin.
Yes.
I wanted and respected by Frank Vogel. I don't know. He did say, and I thought this was one of the more, sort of strange and cryptic comments that got kind of glossed over right at the beginning, of his thing. He sort of sat down and was talking about last year. And Russ said, what happened to me last season, let me pull it, make sure I have the right thing. The details about what happened to me don't really matter. So clearly there's some stuff where Russ clearly feels like he was wronged in certain ways last year. And didn't want to get into it, didn't want to talk about it, whatever. It is a different
Well,
start.
he realizes it's lose-lose for him.
Of course it is. But some of that was related to Frank. Clearly didn't have a good relationship. And so this relationship is better. AD noted, because maybe we'll talk about this after the break. Those guys got together and talked about what went wrong and what could be different this year and all that stuff. I wasn't in the room when those conversations happened, but AD noted it's a new staff, it's a new roster. So everything kind of naturally resets anyway, but he's got a better relationship with Darvin than he had with Frank. And if the organization doesn't make him feel wanted and Darvin does, that's probably an improvement. At least it's something.
Yeah. It's not a good match. And maybe it evolves into a better one. And that could be a byproduct of a better relationship with Darvin, like you said. Just LeBron and AD staying healthy will make a lot of this go better regardless.
Yep.
And then it's like, look, it's not apples to apples because the ceiling with those guys was so much higher. But Kobe and Shaq spent 8 years not liking playing together, and they went to 4 finals during those 8 years.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And they really openly did not like playing together. They found their moments where they enjoyed it, but for the most part, they did not like playing together.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly it worked. So, and this is only 1 year that it has to survive, because Russ ain't going to be on the team moving forward after this year.
All right, so let's talk about LeBron and AD, because those guys are the key here, and both of them seem to understand that. And so a few very key nuggets that came out of media day from those guys next. So one more thing we'll get deeper into this tomorrow, because I think the whole Pat Bev experience is an important aspect that differentiates this year from last year, in addition to Kendrick Nunn and all this. Like the Pat Bev vibe at media day the energy was strong and it was significant. He also said that he and Russ are cool, and that this, a lot of and they've been cool for years. It's been fine for years. And we in the media have kind of been overblowing it and riding this train and missing it. We can talk about whether or not we believe him. But that did come up. Why don't we do that for Wednesday? Make sure we get into it, like the whole Pat Bev thing, including with Russ.
But somebody who asked Patrick Beverley about this, I have thoughts.
Yes. Somebody named Andy. Yeah, you asked him. So we'll get to that for Wednesday. LeBron has said all kinds of interesting things. He talked about Kareem and what it's going to mean to pass Kareem, as the NBA's all-time leading points scorer. Talked about why he returned to the Lakers and kind of what brought him here, and that decision to at least sign a short extension with the team. To me, the thing that stuck out the most was when the amount of time he spent talking about availability and health. He has been famously resistant to any kind of rest, all that stuff. I get the distinct impression that will not be the case this year, that he just understands that concessions need to be made, because if he can't play, he can't do, then he really can't. This team is sunk, and he can't do what he used to do and still stay on the court. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the catch-22 that they're going to be looking to avoid, and this is really where AD becomes just exceptionally important. They can't fall into this circular trap where, you're trying to preserve LeBron, but the moment you take LeBron off the floor, everything falls apart, because that's been the problem that they've had even during the year when they won the championship, and even during the first half of the 2020-2021 season, where things were going well before guys started getting hurt. Like, there was a pretty rapid drop off when LeBron was on the court versus off. It was one of the reasons where I thought, as much as I was not in favor of the Westbrook deal, I was like, if you're going to try to talk yourself into this, Westbrook might be the best version of a poor man's LeBron you can find in
that was absolutely one of their justifications,
right?
Where they thought it would make life easier for LeBron.
Right, and like specifically the moments where LeBron wasn't playing. As it turned out, you didn't get enough of those guys together, but also I don't think they played them enough apart to really capitalize on it. I actually thought when LeBron and Russ were both available, they played them too much together to really try to work that advantage. But they have to, as a team, starting with AD downward, they have to be able to survive better without LeBron. And that's always the quandary with any team that is built around a LeBron James centered offense. Nobody else can do what LeBron does.
And the problem is, the place you would go, Andy, to look at that is your 29? Your 29-year-old other star who he can pick up the slack there. He can pick up a few extra minutes, more offensive responsibility, more high leverage stuff, whatever it is. Except you can't feel confident doing that with Anthony Davis either. So they've built a roster where, they are still just as dependent, if not more dependent on their stars than they've ever been. But the stars are just as unreliable. And AD, he talked about playing with a chip on his shoulder. He talked LeBron talked about how important he is, and Darvin talked AD really is the core to all of this. Like, he is the thing that differentiates the Lakers from being a fringy type playoff team to something potentially better. And it's the difference between Anthony Davis playing like an MVP candidate, which he's capable of, and playing like an all-star, which he will do in his sleep, if he's on the floor. That gap is what is, in my mind, what defines the Lakers' opportunities to surprise people. And I think AD understands, judging by what he said on Monday, I feel like AD gets that.
He has to by now. I mean, as much as he said that he is not going to put pressure on himself to be like a godlike figure on the basketball court, because I think he just recognizes there's no point. And in certain respects, what's held him back has been health. As much as I think there is a mindset element with AD that sometimes gets in the way. Like we've talked about before, he can be a little bit like Powell in the sense that he can be too structured of a player, too much of somebody looking to follow the rules while you're out there. And sometimes you got to break the rules and just say, F it, this is mine right now. I'm taking over.
Agree.
But really, at the end of the day, the biggest impediment has been AD's ability to stay on the court, and trying to put pressure on yourself to not get injured is pointless. But it really does.
Because he's not getting hurt on purpose.
Right. Or to the best of my knowledge, though, he's not avoiding doing things that would prevent injury. Yeah. He's obviously not getting hurt on purpose. But
he actually did say that his doctors told him that had he not put in the type of work that he did last summer on his body, that his injury last year would have been worse.
Sure.
I don't know what that means, but so who knows? That could be true.
The other thing, though, I was thinking about, and just popped into my head now, in terms of LeBron and the minutes that he typically plays and the concessions that he would have to make to lessen that load, certainly in the first half of the season, which was talked about by him, talked about Darvin Ham as well. I wonder if actually one area he's going to have to be a little bit less rigid would be his substitution patterns, because we've covered now LeBron going into his fifth season. That dude comes in and out of games unless there's contextual foul issues or things like that. He comes out at the exact same point in the first quarter. He comes back in at the top of the second. He comes out at the exact point, in the third quarter. You know what I mean? It's always exactly the same. And in order to, in particular, I think allow Russ maybe more ability to run the show in ways that make him happy, but also might bring out the most in him. LeBron may have to be a little bit more flexible about when he comes in and out of games in
Yeah, it
terms
could
of,
be. And I think there's that. And I just letting you know, I looked last year, he played 37 minutes a game. The year before that, he played 33. So, that 4 minutes, giving back that, I think, if they could keep him between 30 and 35 consistently over the first 2 months, 3 months of the season, they would be thrilled. 32, 33 minutes a game. Oh, they would
you know
love
what'll help? Winning, because
Yes.
for a lot of the 2021 for the 2021 season, they were winning games. He probably
Yeah.
wasn't playing fourth quarter minutes.
Well, they were winning. They were and playing well enough that they can get by. But this is the hard thing, because the early season schedule is very difficult. The Lakers can't really afford to fall deep behind in the West. I mean, they're not good enough to be able to do that. And that push-pull between the long season, and the stark reality of just how good the West is. And I say this the Lakers' potential to surprise, the potential to none of that changes how good the West is and how competitive it's going to be all year long. So even if they are more competitive, these particular pressures don't go away. They're surprising people. Guys are staying healthy. Things come together better than they're going to win the high 40s, low 50s, whatever it is. They still can't afford to take too much off the gas, because it could take close to 50 wins just to stay in the top 6.
Yeah.
The West is that good. And so that is going to be one of the hardest things for Darvin to navigate, because not only do you have the issues with their minutes, you have an entirely new roster that you got to feel out and try to develop some continuity while seeing who can do what, figuring out it's a real challenge. Maybe we can do this, I'm sure we will before the season starts, but really lay out some of the really hard challenges that Darvin faces as a first-year head coach going into all this, because it's tough. So much that was left over we didn't get into. I thought LeBron's explanation of what brought him to LA and what brought him back is worth talking about. His conversation and his comments about Kareem. I think that process is going to be kind of fascinating, depending on how well the team is playing at any given point. Lonnie Walker said some stuff that I thought is worth noting. Juan Toscano-Anderson. We heard from Kendrick Nunn. We heard from Pat Bev. So a lot more
Rob
from
Pelinka
Media
discussed
Day.
the roster construction overall.
Oh, yes. Rob Pelinka had a few things to say about that, which were noteworthy.
He made up a word.
So we have so much more to get into from Monday's Media Day as training camp has opened. The season has started. We are here, and we are excited to have you with us. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to watch the show. Make sure you subscribe so you know when that bad boy pops up every day. It's usually up earlier than the audio product, so it's one of the perks of signing up. See everybody next time.